The night begins softly, as most nights do, but if you listen closely, you might notice how even silence has its own layers. There is the faint hum of crickets in the grass, the occasional rustle of leaves as a breeze drifts through, and above it all, the vast dome of the sky where the moon hangs, glowing, distant, yet impossibly familiar. You may have felt it before, that gentle tug the moon has on the human heart. It is only a rock suspended in space, and yet, for as long as we have told stories, people have turned to it for comfort, for wonder, for mystery. Perhaps tonight, you are lying in bed, your eyes closed or half closed, and you can picture the pale light spilling across a quiet landscape. Imagine it falling across rolling hills, or across the curved roofs of wooden houses, or perhaps filtering through the tall green stalks of a bamboo grove. That is where our story begins. And as you walk with me into that grove, know that this story has been told countless times before us, by parents to their children, by traveling storytellers, by poets, and by scholars. It has crossed centuries, and yet it remains alive, as though each retelling stirs the embers of something eternal. The tale is Japanese, but its themes are wide enough to belong to anyone who has ever gazed at the moon with longing. It is called the tale of the bamboo cutter, though many know it instead as the story of Princess Kaguya, the shining girl who came from the moon. It is said to be one of the very oldest surviving works of Japanese prose, its roots reaching back to the Heian era, over 1,000 years ago. Imagine that, words written then, still alive today, still breathing through our voices, still able to slip into your ears now, in this quiet hour, but let us not rush. We will take our steps slowly, as if wandering barefoot on soft earth, pausing to notice the details of the world around us. That is part of the gift of these old folk tales. They are not only stories of what happened, but of how people once imagined life, how they made sense of beauty, longing, and time itself. Picture the bamboo grove again. It is night. The stalks rise high above you, straight and smooth, their pale green leaves catching silver as the moonlight drapes across them. The air smells faintly of damp earth and sweet grass. Each breath you take feels cooled by the shade of the bamboo, and the grove seems to hold a hush, as though it knows secrets it has been keeping for centuries. And in that hush, you could almost hear the sound of a story being told by lamplight. In old villages, people gathered in the evenings when work was finished, when fields were quiet, and when children grew drowsy at their parents' knees. Imagine the glow of a single paper lantern, the way the flame inside flickered softly, painting gentle shadows on the walls. A storyteller might begin slowly, their voice measured, deliberate, allowing listeners to sink deeper into the rhythm of the words. In such a setting, the moon itself would feel closer, as though leaning in to listen. Why do we, as humans, look to the moon for stories of longing and beauty? Perhaps because it is constant, and yet unreachable. We see it in every age of our lives, and in every season of the world, but we cannot touch it, cannot grasp it. It is a companion who keeps distance, always near but never ours. And so, when we speak of yearning, or of beauty too perfect for this world, we turn to the moon. It becomes a mirror for our desires, our hopes, our sorrows. And out of that longing, the story of Princess Kaguya was born. But before she appears, let us linger here at the threshold of the tale. Feel the quiet anticipation, the sense that something wondrous is just beyond sight. The bamboo itself holds meaning in Japanese culture. Strong yet flexible, hollow yet alive, it bends but rarely breaks. In its simple form, it carries symbolism of purity, of resilience, of a bridge between the ordinary and the sacred. No wonder, then, that a miracle should be discovered inside its hollow stalks. Even now, if you close your eyes, you might imagine walking deeper into that grove. Each step soft, the ground cushioned with fallen leaves. The moonlight filters down in ribbons, falling across your path. The air cools your skin, and the world outside the grove seems to fall away. It is just you, the bamboo, and the watchful gaze of the moon above. And in the distance, perhaps you see the faint glow of a lantern. Someone waits there, ready to tell you what happens next. Stories like these invite us not just to listen, but to drift, to imagine ourselves within their world. And maybe that is why they are so soothing at night. Because as you follow their gentle path, you feel time loosen its grip. The demands of the day recede, and you are left with something simpler, something eternal. The cadence of words, the rhythm of breath, the soft unfolding of memory. As you listen, imagine yourself walking through a forest of tall bamboo under a soft moon. Before we continue, let me gently invite you to subscribe and join us for more stories like this, so you never miss a chance to wander into history's quiet corners. Take a breath. Feel how the story has only just begun. The moon glows above, the bamboo sways in the breeze, and somewhere in the shadows, a humble cutter of bamboo moves through his nightly work. He does not yet know that his life is about to change forever. But for now, the grove is quiet, and the world waits, as it always has, for the moment when a shaft of light breaks through the ordinary and reveals the extraordinary within. When we step into the daily life of the bamboo cutter, we step into a world that moves slowly, almost in rhythm with the seasons. The Heian era, stretching from the late 8th century to the 12th, was a time of great refinement at the imperial court in Kyoto, of poetry, silk, and elegant rituals. But far from the palace walls, in the villages and wooded hillsides, ordinary people lived in quieter, humbler ways. Their lives were measured not by court calendars or elaborate ceremonies, but by the turning of the seasons, the ripening of the rice, and the strength of their own hands. The bamboo cutter was one of these people. His home would have been simple, built of wood and earth, its roof thatched with reeds. Imagine a small dwelling nestled against the edge of the forest, its walls thin enough that the sound of rain pattering outside could be heard clearly within. The scent of smoke from a cooking fire would linger in the air, rising through a hole in the roof. A modest home, yet enough to shield from the wind, enough to hold the warmth of shared meals and quiet conversations. The tools of his trade were plain but precious. A small hand axe, sharpened carefully. A knife for splitting stalks. Perhaps a basket woven of reeds to carry pieces home. Day after day, he would walk into the groves, his feet familiar with the paths through the undergrowth. The stalks of bamboo, tall and hollow, rose around him like pillars of a living temple. With each swing of his axe, a clean, hollow sound would echo, followed by the crack as the stalk gave way. The bamboo was strong, yet it yielded when cut, offering itself for countless uses. From the bamboo, he would fashion many things. Strips could be split and shaved into fine threads, woven into baskets for carrying rice or firewood. Thicker pieces could be cut into cups, ladles, or even flutes for children. Bamboo served as scaffolding, as fences, as containers. It was said that nearly every part of life could be touched by bamboo in one form or another. And so the cutter's work, though humble, was deeply woven into the needs of his community. His wife shared in this rhythm. In the mornings, she might prepare rice porridge, simple and warm, perhaps flavored with pickled vegetables or a bit of miso. She tended a small garden beside the house, coaxing greens from the soil, pulling weeds by hand. At the loom, she would weave sturdy cloth for their use, or finer fabric if they were lucky enough to trade for silk threads. Her days, like his, were full of steady tasks. Not hurried, not idle, but paced with the steady patience of a life tied to land and season. There is a quiet dignity in such a life. It may appear simple when compared to the dazzling courtly world often celebrated in history books, but simplicity does not mean emptiness. Rather, it is full of small details: the way smoke curls from the hearth at dusk, the satisfaction of splitting bamboo into even strips, the sound of frogs croaking near the rice paddies at night. Each day was a cycle of effort and rest, of giving to the earth and receiving in turn. And yet, even in the midst of this rhythm, there lingered an ache. For the bamboo cutter and his wife, there were no children in their home. In a world where family was the heart of daily life, where children carried on the work of their parents and ensured care in old age, this absence would have been felt deeply. Imagine the evenings when work was done, when the couple sat by the fire with only the crackling wood for company. They may have spoken of small things, or simply sat in silence, but beneath it all was the knowledge that their household would remain quiet, generation after generation. Still, there is also joy in their lives. The bamboo cutter may have felt pride when his baskets were used in the village, when his tools proved useful, when his work sustained others. His wife, too, would find joy in tending the small details of their home, in the scent of food cooking slowly over the fire, in the rare laughter shared between them. A childless life was not an empty life. It was simply a life shaped differently, quiet joy balanced with quiet ache. The Heian era was also a time when belief in spirits, or kami, was deeply woven into everyday life. Mountains, rivers, trees, all were thought to hold presence. For a bamboo cutter, walking daily into the groves, there may have been moments when the light struck just so, filtering down through the leaves, and he felt the presence of something unseen. Perhaps he bowed his head before cutting, offering a silent thanks. Perhaps he wondered, in his heart, if the bamboo itself could hear him. In such a world, the extraordinary did not feel far from the ordinary. It is easy, isn't it, to imagine the small routines of their days? To see the bamboo cutter, sweat glistening on his brow as he hefts a stalk onto his shoulder. To see his wife, kneeling in the dirt, brushing soil from a fresh radish. To hear the quiet creak of the loom, the chirping of sparrows outside, the rustle of wind against the thatched roof. And in all of this, to feel the weight of time, not rushing, but flowing, steady and inevitable. When we place ourselves in their world, we may notice how much of life was lived close to the earth. No clocks ticked on the walls. No lights burned away the darkness. Dawn and dusk, planting and harvest, hunger and rest, these were the measures of their days. And though the couple might never have traveled far, though their world was bounded by the grove, the fields, and the sky above, within those boundaries life unfolded with richness and meaning. In stories, we often hurry to the miraculous moment, the discovery of something wondrous. But it is worth pausing here, in the ordinariness, because this is where the wonder will later take root. A miracle that happens in an empty room has little to anchor it. A miracle that happens in the heart of a quiet, longing couple becomes unforgettable. Can you imagine the quiet joy, and sometimes the quiet ache, of a life built from simple, steady days? The bamboo cutter and his wife could not have known that the rhythm of their lives was about to shift, that the hush of the grove would soon hold more than just the whisper of leaves. But for now, their days remained steady, shaped by work, by rest, and by the longing that lingered softly at the edges of each night. It was an evening much like any other. The bamboo cutter had set out into the grove, his axe carried over his shoulder, his mind already steady with the rhythm of his work. He knew each bend of the path, each cluster of stalks where the bamboo grew tallest, and he walked with the ease of one who had made the same journey countless times before. Yet even in familiar places, the world sometimes offers moments that shimmer with strangeness. Perhaps it was the way the moonlight fell that night, casting the grove in silver. Perhaps it was the stillness of the air, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. Whatever the reason, that was the night when the bamboo cutter's life changed forever. He paused before a particularly tall stalk. Its surface gleamed faintly in the pale light, smooth as polished wood, cool beneath his touch. He raised his axe, as he had done 1,000 times before, and with a practiced swing, he split the stalk open, But instead of the hollow chamber he expected, a glow burst forth, soft at first, then brighter, as though the moon itself had been caught inside. He shielded his eyes, blinking against the radiance. And when the light gentled, he saw her. Inside the hollow bamboo sat a tiny girl, no larger than his hand. She was radiant, her skin pale as snow, her robes glimmering like threads of starlight. She did not cry or startle. Instead, she looked up at him with calm eyes, ancient and innocent all at once. The bamboo cutter's heart stopped. His breath caught in his throat. He had never seen such a sight. Carefully, almost reverently, he reached out his calloused hands, and she rested easily in his palm, light as a feather. In that moment, the bamboo grove no longer felt ordinary. It felt sacred. The leaves rustled overhead like a whispered chorus, and the moonlight seemed to deepen, as though blessing this encounter. He held the child close, and for the first time in many years, he felt tears well in his eyes. Tears not of sorrow, but of awe, of gratitude. To understand the weight of this moment, we must step back and consider how people of Heian, Japan viewed their world. Nature was not merely backdrop, it was alive, animated with spirits known as kami. Every mountain, river, and grove carried presence. A sudden wind could be a whisper of a deity. A shaft of light breaking through clouds might be a sign. For a man who walked daily among bamboo, the discovery of a radiant child within a stalk would not be seen as accident. It would be blessing, divine intervention, a gift from the unseen world. The bamboo cutter cradled the glowing girl in his hands, his heart full. Here, in this child, was an answer to his unspoken prayers. For he and his wife had lived many years without children, their evenings often quiet with longing. And now, from the very work of his hands, from the bamboo that had sustained them for so long, life itself had been offered. A miracle, delicate and shining, no bigger than a doll, yet immense in meaning. He carried her home with careful steps, the glow lighting his path. His wife, when she saw the child, fell to her knees in wonder. Together, they gazed at her as though afraid she might vanish like a dream. But she did not fade. Instead, she smiled, reaching her tiny hands toward them. And in that moment, the hut that had always felt a little too quiet, a little too empty, was filled with warmth. The bamboo cutter and his wife bowed their heads, whispering thanks to the spirits, to the moon, to the universe itself. In the days that followed, more miracles appeared. Each time the bamboo cutter split a stalk, he found a treasure. Nuggets of gold, shimmering fabrics, jewels hidden in the hollow stems. It was as though the grove itself was blessing them, ensuring they could raise this child in comfort. From humble poverty, they found themselves surrounded by abundance. Yet even among these treasures, the child was the most precious. She grew quickly, faster than any ordinary child, and with each day her beauty seemed to deepen, radiant and otherworldly. But let us linger a moment on the bamboo itself, the vessel that carried her. In Japanese culture, bamboo is more than a plant, it is a symbol. Strong yet flexible, it bends in the storm but does not break. Its hollow form suggests humility and openness, while its evergreen leaves embody endurance through the seasons. To find life, light, and treasure within bamboo is to affirm its role as a bridge between worlds, a link between the mundane and the divine. Perhaps that is why this story has always resonated, because from something so familiar, so ordinary, came something utterly extraordinary. It is worth asking, how do we respond when something unexpected enters our lives? For the bamboo cutter and his wife, the shining child did not inspire fear, but gratitude. They did not question whether they were worthy. They simply opened their hearts and received her. In their acceptance, they remind us of the human capacity for wonder, for seeing the miraculous not as intrusion, but as gift. And what of you? Stories like this remind us, have you ever had something arrive in your life that that felt like a gift from the universe itself? It might not have shone like the moon, nor appeared in so dramatic a fashion, but perhaps it was a friendship, a moment of beauty, or a sudden turning point that changed everything. For the bamboo cutter and his wife, the shining child was more than fulfillment of longing. She was proof that life still held surprises, even after years of sameness, even after sorrow had settled like dust in their hearts. And so, each night, as they watched her sleep, her small body glowing faintly in the dim hut, they felt both joy and reverence. They named her Kaguya-hime, the radiant princess, for she seemed too luminous to be anything but royalty of some higher realm. In her presence, their lives transformed. The once humble hut became a place of light and laughter. The couple, once bowed by age and weariness, now walked with renewed energy, carrying the joy of parents who had been unexpectedly blessed. And in the village, whispers began to spread of the miraculous child, her beauty, her glow. But for now, let us remain in this first moment of discovery, in that grove where the bamboo cutter split open a stalk and found not emptiness, but light. Imagine him standing there, stunned, the glow reflected in his eyes. Imagine the stillness of the grove, the silence before his heartbeat returned, the careful way he lifted her into his hands. Such moments cannot be planned, cannot be earned. They arrive suddenly, changing everything. And so, from a single stalk of bamboo, the story of the Moon Princess begins. The child of light did not remain small for long. Kaguya-hime, as the bamboo cutter and his wife called her, grew with a swiftness that astonished them. In mere weeks, she seemed to pass through the stages of childhood, and before many moons had risen, she was already the size and shape of a young woman. Her parents watched with a mixture of awe and tenderness. Each day they awoke to find her lovelier than the day before, her skin radiant, her eyes like pools reflecting starlight. It must have been bewildering, and yet it was also a joy unlike anything they had known. Imagine them, two people who had long accepted that their house would remain quiet and childless, now suddenly filled with the presence of a daughter. Their evenings no longer passed in silence. There was laughter now, and conversation, and the soft sound of a girl humming as she moved about the home. Her presence was a lantern lit in what had once been shadow. The bamboo cutter and his wife tended to her carefully, as though she were a rare blossom. They wove garments for her from fine silks, bought with the gold and treasures that had begun appearing in the bamboo stalks since her arrival. They combed her long, dark hair until it shone like a river at night. They taught her the customs of their people, how to bow with grace, how to pour tea, how to recite verses of poetry. Though she learned quickly, it seemed less like learning and more like remembering. Everything she touched, she made elegant. To understand how remarkable she appeared to those around her, we must consider the ideals of beauty in the Heian era. At the imperial court, beauty was an art form, a language through which status and refinement were expressed. Women painted their faces with white powder, darkened their eyebrows, and sometimes even blackened their teeth, which was seen as alluring. Long, straight hair was considered a mark of beauty, and the lengthier the hair, the more refined the woman was thought to be. Garments were layered in exquisite combinations, their colors chosen to reflect the seasons. Plum blossoms in spring, deep maple in autumn, pale snow in winter, and always there was poetry. To be beautiful was not merely to have a pleasing face, but to embody sensitivity, elegance, and the ability to weave words into verses that captured fleeting moments. A woman's worth was often measured not only by her appearance, but by her capacity to move others with a poem set on a folded slip of paper. Kaguya-hime seemed to embody all of this and more, though she had not been raised within the court. Even in her modest village, her presence carried the grace of aristocracy. Villagers who caught sight of her whispered in awe, speaking of her as though she were not entirely of this earth. She was luminous, not only in beauty but in spirit. And as word spread, People from beyond the village came hoping for a glimpse of the radiant young woman who had grown so suddenly from a child found in a stalk of bamboo. Yet behind her brightness was the quiet, steady love of her adoptive parents. They watched her grow with pride, but also with the tenderness of those who know how precious time can be. Her mother, especially, must have felt both joy and unease. For women of the Heian world, beauty was both blessing and burden. It was a path to admiration, but also to scrutiny and expectation. To be called beautiful was to be elevated, but it was also to be confined by the desires of others. If we listen closely to the voices of women from that time, through diaries, letters, and poems, we hear both delight in being admired and sorrow at the lack of freedom it often brought. Court women, cloistered behind screens, were admired for their elegance, yet often longed for the chance to choose their own path. To be defined by beauty was to be trapped by it. Perhaps, in the quiet of her heart, Kaguya-hime felt something of this tension too. Her parents, though, could not help but celebrate her. Each day she brightened their home, and with each day their affection deepened. Her father may have sat watching her by lamplight, marveling at how she had transformed their lives. Her mother may have whispered small prayers of thanks as she brushed her daughter's hair, feeling the strands slip like silk between her fingers. As Kaguya-hime grew, so too did the treasures that accompanied her. The bamboo continued to offer gifts, silks finer than any her mother had ever seen, coins of gold, jewels that caught the firelight. The couple, once humble villagers, found themselves lifted into prosperity. Yet their wealth did not seem as miraculous to them as the girl herself. For what is gold compared to the warmth of a daughter's laughter, or jewels compared to the light of her smile? Still, prosperity changed their world. They were able to dress her in the layered robes of the courtly style, colors chosen with care, soft cherry blossom pinks in spring, fresh green hues in summer, russet reds for autumn, snowy whites in winter. Even in clothing, she seemed beyond compare. Where others looked beautiful, she looked ethereal. The villagers must have wondered what fate awaited such a girl. They must have whispered among themselves. Was she destined to marry into nobility? Would she be taken to the capital, her radiance catching the eye of lords and princes? Or was she, as some suspected, touched by the divine, destined to return to some higher realm? And what of Kaguya-hime herself? Did she feel content in her life with her parents, sheltered and adored? Or did she sense, even then, the pull of something beyond? The story does not tell us her thoughts in these early years, but it is not hard to imagine moments of quiet reflection, her gaze lifted to the moon, her mind filled with unspoken longing. Her story reminds us of the double-edged nature of beauty. It brings admiration, yet it can also bring demands, expectations, and confinement. To be admired so deeply is to be placed on a pedestal, one that can feel as lonely as it is high. And yet, for her parents, there was only pride and love. If you're enjoying wandering through this old world with me, take a moment to share your thoughts. What do you imagine life was like for women whose beauty was seen as their greatest treasure? For now, let us rest in this moment of peace, before the suitors come, before the impossible tasks, before the sorrow of farewells. In this chapter of her life, Kaguya-hime is simply a daughter, a light in the home of a bamboo cutter and his wife, a blessing they had never thought to receive. And in their joy, the world feels gentler, if only for a little while. As the seasons turned and Kaguya-hime grew into her full brilliance, word of her beauty spread far beyond the quiet village. Travelers carried whispers to the capital, and soon lords and princes began to arrive, each more determined than the last to win her hand. To her parents, the attention was both an honor and a burden. For what parent would not wish their daughter to be cherished? And yet, what parent would not fear the power and pressure of noble suitors? The men who came were not ordinary admirers. They were high courtiers, princes of the imperial line, men accustomed to being obeyed. Each was struck by Kaguya-hime's radiance, and each believed himself worthy to claim her. They said poems. They made promises. They tried to outshine one another with grand declarations of love. But Kaguya-hime, gentle yet resolute, did not return their affections. Perhaps she saw in their eyes not love but desire, for beauty, for possession, for the prestige of claiming what others could not. In time, she set them tasks. If they truly loved her, she said, let them prove it not with words, but with deeds. She named 5 treasures, each legendary, each thought impossible to obtain. A jeweled branch from the fabled empty horai, the stone begging bowl of the Buddha, the robe woven from the fur of the fire rat, a jewel guarded within the neck of a dragon, and a cowrie shell born in the swells of the swallow's nest. Each object carried a meaning deeper than its surface, and each suitor set forth believing that through cunning, wealth, or sheer determination, he might succeed. The first, a proud prince, was tasked with finding the jeweled branch of empty horai, a mythical mountain said to lie far across the eastern sea. In the imagination of Japan, Horai was a place of immortality, a land where eternal youth blossomed, untouched by death. The branch of its tree was adorned with shimmering jewels in place of blossoms, glowing with light that never faded. Such a treasure represented the unreachable ideal, the dream of life without end. The prince, however, was no immortal traveler. He was a man of the court, wealthy and clever, but not capable of crossing into legend. So he set craftsmen to work. They carved a branch from wood and decorated it with gold, silver, and gems, a dazzling imitation. He presented it to Kaguya-hime with pride, confident she would be convinced. But when his deception was revealed, his shame was as great as his ambition had been. The false branch could not carry the weight of eternity. Another prince sought the stone bowl of the Buddha, a relic said to have been used by the enlightened one himself. Such a bowl symbolized spiritual purity, the abandonment of desire, and the path to truth. Yet in his desire to win Kaguya-hime, the suitor revealed that he did not understand the very meaning of the bowl. He sent messengers far and wide, scouring temples and markets, offering bribes to monks. At last he returned with a bowl, withered and ancient-looking, claiming it was the sacred relic. But when Kaguya-hime held it in her hands, it failed to glow with the divine light that true relics were said to carry. The suitor's shallow grasp of devotion was revealed, and he left in humiliation. A third suitor was tasked with the robe of the fire rat, a mythical beast said to live in the distant lands of China. Its fur was fireproof, and a garment woven from it would never burn. Such a robe was a symbol of resilience, protection against the destructive power of flame. The suitor, eager to impress, purchased what he believed to be the robe from foreign traders. It looked magnificent, but when tested in fire, it quickly turned to ash. His false treasure betrayed him, just as his shallow intentions had betrayed his pursuit. The fourth suitor, more daring than the rest, was commanded to bring the jewel that lay in the neck of a dragon. Dragons in Japanese lore were powerful water deities, guardians of rain and storms. To possess a dragon's jewel was to claim mastery over nature itself. Driven by pride, this prince actually set sail, braving the sea. Yet the storms rose against him, the waves towering, the wind howling. His ship was battered, and he barely survived. Returning empty-handed, he confessed his failure. In his tale, perhaps, lay the closest thing to true effort, for he had indeed tried. But even so, the treasure was unattainable, for no mortal could wrest a jewel from the throat of a dragon. The fifth suitor was tasked with retrieving a cowrie shell from a swallow's nest. At first, it seemed a simple task compared to the others. And yet, cowrie shells were prized in Japan, symbols of fertility and prosperity, and those said to be found in such nests were rare and almost mythical. The suitor climbed to dizzying heights, reaching for a nest where swallows darted and cried. He stumbled, fell, and injured himself grievously. In his desperation, he risked life and limb, but the shell was never his. His quest, too, ended in failure, a reminder that even the smallest of treasures may be beyond reach. So it was that each suitor, though noble and determined, fell short. Some through deception, some through misunderstanding, some through the limits of human strength. What they sought was not only rare, but symbolic of desires that could not be easily fulfilled: immortality, purity, resilience, dominion, prosperity. Each quest reflected more of the suitor's longing than of Kaguya-hime's heart. As we linger with these stories, we may ask ourselves, did these men ever truly love her, or did they simply covet what she represented? Was she, to them, a woman with feelings and spirit, or a prize to be displayed? Their quests tell us much about them, but little about her. Perhaps that was her wisdom in assigning the tasks, to reveal their true nature without ever needing to reject them outright. The Heian era was an age that valued poetry, performance, and display. To compose a clever verse, to present a dazzling gift, these were seen as proofs of love. Yet love that must be proven with treasures is love that may not endure. In Kaguya-hime's calm refusals, we glimpse a deeper truth, that some hearts cannot be won with jewels or promises, because they belong to another place altogether. Stories like this remind us, have you ever had something arrive in your life that felt like a gift from the universe itself? And in turn, have you ever been asked to give more than you could possibly offer, to meet demands that no one could truly fulfill? These tales remind us that sometimes, what people ask of us reveals more about them than about us. What do you think? Were these princes ever truly in love with Kaguya-hime? For now, let us rest here, in the quiet after the suitors have gone. They have returned to their palaces, chastened or humiliated, their quests unfinished. The bamboo cutter's house is calm again, filled only with the steady presence of the girl who shines like the moon. Yet even as peace returns, the story is not done. For love, longing, and destiny are forces that no mortal effort can deter. The story of Kaguya-hime had reached far and wide, carried not only by rumor, but by the hushed admiration of those who had glimpsed her radiance. It was perhaps inevitable that word would reach the highest halls of power, until at last even the emperor himself turned his thoughts toward her. The Heian court was a world where beauty and refinement were not luxuries, but essential currencies. To be seen as elegant in dress, to compose poetry of subtle brilliance, to notice the shifting of seasons and the fall of blossoms, these were not mere pastimes, but ways of signaling one's worth. For an emperor, to admire a woman was to admire not only her face, but her ability to weave words, to respond with delicacy, to embody the grace of the age. And so, when the emperor heard of Kaguya-hime, he was stirred not only by desire, but by curiosity. Who was this woman, radiant enough to silence courtiers, mysterious enough to turn away princes? Surely a girl of such fame must be tested, as others were through poetry. Letters were sent, carefully brushed in elegant calligraphy upon fine paper, their ink carrying not only words, but emotion, each stroke a signal of refinement. The emperor's poems may have been filled with seasonal images: autumn leaves drifting upon water, the lonely call of a bird at dusk, the first snow resting upon pine. He compared her beauty to the moon, her presence to blossoms that bloom only once in a lifetime. Kaguya-hime replied, for she was nothing if not courteous. Her words, too, came wrapped in poetry, gentle yet distant. She acknowledged his attention, responded with grace, yet did not yield her heart. In this exchange of verses, we see the most refined form of Heian courtship, a dialogue not of direct confession, but of metaphor, nature, and suggestion. A single line of poetry could mean love, longing, or refusal, depending on how one read between the lines. The emperor, accustomed to admiration, must have been both intrigued and unsettled. Few women dared resist him, and fewer still did so with such elegance. Perhaps her replies seemed like moonlight itself, beautiful but untouchable. He offered visits, and in time, he did go to see her. Yet even face to face, her gentle refusals held. She bowed, she spoke with kindness, but her heart remained beyond his reach. Imagine, for a moment, receiving letters from an emperor. Would you feel honored or trapped? For a woman in the Heian court, such an invitation could not be lightly dismissed. To be admired by the emperor was to stand in a place of great privilege, but also of danger. His attention could elevate, but it could also consume. Few could resist without consequence. And yet Kaguya-hime, bound by a destiny deeper than courtly expectation, did resist. In her refusal, we see a rare thread of agency. Most women of the age lived within the confines of duty, to family, to rank, to marriage arranged for alliance rather than affection. Their voices are preserved in poems and diaries that whisper of longing, of stolen moments, of private griefs. They wrote of nights spent waiting for a lover who never arrived, of autumn moons that reminded them of separation, of blossoms that fell too quickly. Through poetry, they expressed what life often denied them. Kaguya-hime, though, was different. She was not born into these structures. She had arrived as a miracle, a mystery, and she seemed to obey no earthly expectation. To the emperor, she was the ultimate prize. To her parents, his interest must have been overwhelming, an honor so great that refusal seemed unthinkable. And yet she refused, not rudely, but with the quiet firmness of one who belongs to another realm. What must her parents have felt, caught between gratitude and fear? Gratitude that their daughter had risen so high as to capture the attention of the emperor himself, and fear that her refusals might bring offense. Yet the emperor, curiously, did not punish her rejection. Perhaps he, too, recognized something unusual about her. Perhaps he sensed that her light was not one to be claimed. There is something deeply human in this moment. The most powerful man in the land, unable to win the heart of a woman who chose her own path. It reminds us that love, affection, and autonomy cannot always be commanded, no matter the rank or title. Power can open doors, but it cannot force true devotion. In reflecting on this exchange, we glimpse both the fragility and the resilience of women's agency in Heian, Japan. Their world was shaped by hierarchy, yet within that hierarchy, they carved spaces for subtle resistance. A carefully chosen word, a delayed reply, a metaphor that concealed as much as it revealed. These were the weapons of those without swords or armies. Kaguya-hime's poetry, gentle though it was, became her shield. Still, the tension lingers. Did she feel the weight of those expectations pressing upon her? Did she gaze at the moon on nights when the court's messengers departed, wondering when her freedom would slip away? The tale does not tell us, but her refusal suggests a heart that longed not for palaces but for something else. Something beyond the grasp of emperors. As her story moves forward, we see more clearly that her destiny was never meant to remain within the world of mortals. The emperor, with all his refinement and power, was a reminder of how deeply human desires reach for what they cannot hold. He could admire her, honor her, even respect her refusal, but he could not change the path she was walking. In this, Kaguya-hime becomes more than a figure of beauty. She becomes a symbol of the unattainable, of the truths that lie beyond wealth, beyond rank, beyond the reach of even emperors. Her heart was never truly in the court, for it was bound to another world entirely. And so the poems were exchanged, the visits made, but her answer never shifted. The emperor's longing remained unfulfilled, and her autonomy, quiet but steadfast, remained intact. Imagine again, if you will, what it means to resist such power with nothing more than words, nothing more than silence. Would you have felt courage in that resistance, or fear? Perhaps both. For Kaguya-hime, her light was her protection, her destiny her shield. And though the emperor reached for her, as so many others had, she remained the moon, visible, radiant, but forever out of reach. Imagine for a moment receiving letters from an emperor. Would you feel honored or trapped? Share your reflections if you wish. I'd love to know. As summer slipped toward autumn, a hush seemed to fall over Kaguya-hime's heart. Her laughter grew softer, her gaze lingered longer on the night sky. The bamboo cutter and his wife, who loved her as dearly as any parents could love a child, began to notice. A shadow rested upon her radiance, a kind of sorrow that no silks, no poems, no wealth could lift. One evening, as the cicadas sang their final songs of the season, and the moon rose full and pale, Kaguya-hime called her parents to her side. With gentleness, she told them the truth she had carried silently for so long. She was not of this world. She was a child of the moon, sent down to earth for reasons she herself could not fully explain. Her time here had been precious, a gift both to her and to them. But it was never meant to last. When the next full moon came, she said, those from her celestial home would descend to bring her back. Her parents were stricken. The bamboo cutter, who had found her glowing within the stalk so many years before, could hardly bear the thought of losing her. His wife, who had brushed her daughter's hair and listened to her voice fill the quiet of their home, wept openly. They begged her not to go. Could she not choose to remain? Was her love for them not enough to keep her bound to the earth? Kaguya-hime's sorrow was deep. She wept with them, her tears shining like dew upon her robe. I wish it were so, she said softly, but I am not free to choose. My time here was always a season borrowed, like the blossoms that fall when spring passes. I love you with all my heart, and because of that love, I grieve all the more to leave you. Her words echoed the Japanese sense of mono no aware, the awareness of impermanence, the quiet ache that beauty cannot last forever. The falling of cherry blossoms, the passing of autumn leaves, the fleeting glow of fireflies, all these moments are precious because they vanish. So too was Kaguya-hime's presence, a gift more radiant because it was destined to end. As the nights grew shorter and the day of her departure neared, the house filled with sorrow. The bamboo cutter sought help from the emperor, who by now held Kaguya-hime in his heart. The emperor commanded guards to surround her home, determined that no heavenly beings would take her against her will. Soldiers stood watch, their armor gleaming beneath the moonlight, their faces grim with duty. Yet Kaguya-hime knew what her parents could not accept, that no earthly force could prevent the will of the heavens. She tried, in those final days, to savor each earthly moment. The sound of wind rustling through bamboo leaves, the scent of wood smoke at dusk, the touch of her mother's hands as they folded her robes. She gazed at the moon with a mixture of longing and dread, for it was both home and exile. Imagine the heaviness in her heart, to belong to two worlds and to be torn from one she had come to love. On the night of the full moon, the air grew strangely still. The guards tightened their ranks, the bamboo cutter clutched his daughter's hand, and her mother prayed silently. Then, as the moon reached its zenith, the sky opened. A procession of luminous beings descended upon clouds, their robes shining with an unearthly glow, their faces calm and solemn. They brought with them a robe of feathers, woven with light itself, a garment that would erase Kaguya-hime's sorrow and memory of the earth. The bamboo cutter fell to his knees, begging them to leave his daughter. His wife clung to her, refusing to let go. And Kaguya-hime, torn between duty and love, wept as though her heart might break. Please know, she said, that though I must go, my love for you remains. Nothing can erase what we have shared. Her words trembled in the night air, fragile yet eternal. She embraced them one last time, pressing her face to her mother's shoulder, holding her father's hand. Then the celestial beings placed the feathered robe upon her. Her tears ceased, her sorrow lifted, and her expression grew serene. Slowly, gently, she rose into the sky, carried back to the moon. Her parents reached upward, their cries fading into silence as she disappeared into the night. The house was left quiet once more, the warmth of her presence gone. Yet the memory of her remained, etched as deeply as the grooves in bamboo. The bamboo cutter and his wife lived on, their lives forever marked by the miracle and the loss. They had been given a daughter, only to lose her again, but in that fleeting time. They had known joy greater than they had ever dreamed. The story does not soften the ache of their parting, nor does it promise a reunion. It leaves us instead with the sorrowful truth that some loves are not meant to remain. And yet, within that sorrow lies beauty, the beauty of cherishing what we are given, even as we know it cannot last. As you listen, perhaps you too are remembering someone or something you once had to let go. What do you think makes us cherish the fleeting moments even more deeply? Kaguya-hime's story reminds us that impermanence is not a flaw but a truth of life. It is the brevity of blossoms that makes them precious, the fading of a song that makes it sweet. Her departure, painful as it was, leaves behind not emptiness but memory, a memory so luminous that it has endured through centuries, carried in the hearts of those who tell her tale beneath the moon. And tonight, as the moon rises once more, perhaps we feel her presence in its glow, not as a goddess beyond reach, but as a reminder that love, beauty, and sorrow are bound together, inseparable as the shadows and light that play across the face of the moon. The night of departure arrived like a tide that could not be stopped. The moon rose full and luminous, its silver light spilling across the bamboo groves and painting the humble home of the bamboo cutter in pale glow. Inside, the family clung to one another. Kaguya-hime's parents had not slept for days, their hearts restless with dread, and now their fears stood at the threshold. The emperor, too, had done what he could. When he learned of Kaguya-hime's fate, he had commanded his guards to surround the house. They came in shining armor, their spears upright, their banners whispering in the wind. The soldiers swore they would defend her, that no being, human or divine, would take her away. To her parents, this gave a flicker of comfort. Yet Kaguya-hime, with quiet sadness, knew better. Mortal strength could not resist the will of the heavens. The air grew strangely still, as if even the insects had hushed. Then, in the distance, a glow brighter than moonlight began to spread across the sky. It was not dawn, and yet the heavens lightened. A cloud, gleaming and ethereal, drifted down from the moon, bearing with it figures robed in light. Celestial beings, radiant and solemn, descended in silence, their faces serene, their presence both awe-inspiring and unyielding. The guards held their ranks, spears braced. Yet as the beings approached, the soldiers faltered. Their weapons trembled in their hands. Their bodies grew heavy, and one by one they sank to the ground. No blow was struck, no violence exchanged, only the gentle weight of power beyond their comprehension pressing them down. In moments, the house lay unprotected, the might of the emperor rendered useless before the quiet force of the divine. Inside, Kaguya-hime wept. Her parents clutched at her, desperate, unwilling to release their daughter. "Do not go," her mother cried, her voice breaking like brittle bamboo. Her father, the bamboo cutter, who had once found her shining in the grove, pressed his forehead to her hands, begging the beings to leave her. "She is ours," he pleaded. "She is our child." Kaguya-hime's own sorrows spilled over. She knelt beside them, her tears falling onto the floorboards, shining like drops of dew. "I was given to you for a time," she whispered, "and in that time, you gave me love deeper than I could have imagined. I carry that love with me, always. But I cannot stay. My home calls me, and the moon will not wait." The celestial beings stepped forward, carrying within the robe of feathers, a garment woven with light, shimmering with every color and none, as though it held within it the shifting hues of dawn and dusk, starlight and shadow. Once placed upon her, it would erase her earthly sorrow, lifting her heart free of the grief of separation. Yet before donning it, Kaguya-hime turned to her parents once more. She embraced her mother, holding her as tightly as she could, breathing in the familiar scent of smoke and herbs that clung to her robes. She pressed her forehead to her father's, feeling the callous strength of the man who had raised her. She wept for them, and she wept for herself. Knowing that these moments would be their last, to the emperor, she left a letter, words brushed with the same elegance she had given to every poem, though now filled with farewell. With it she left a vial containing the elixir of immortality, a gift from the moon. Yet she knew he would not drink it. For what is immortality if the one you desire most cannot share it with you? Then, with trembling hands, she allowed the robe of feathers to be draped across her shoulders. As it touched her, the weight of sorrow began to lift. Her tears ceased, her voice steadied. Her expression softened into serenity, as though grief itself had been erased. The memory of earthly pain began to slip away, yet in her heart there remained a quiet echo of love. Her parents reached for her even as she began to rise, their cries breaking the silence of the night. But their hands could not hold her. Slowly, gently, she ascended, carried upward with the luminous beings, her figure glowing brighter as she moved toward the moon. The bamboo grove shone with silver light, every leaf trembling as though the earth itself grieved. And then she was gone. The night returned to stillness, leaving behind only her letter, her robe of ordinary silk folded upon the floor, and the aching emptiness where she had stood. Her parents wept until their voices failed. The guards, released from their weight, rose in shame and sorrow. And the emperor, when he received her letter, carried it with him always, a reminder that not even an emperor's command could bind the heart of one destined for the heavens. Yet even in their grief, there was a gentleness. For what is sorrow but the measure of love? They had been given the gift of her presence, brief though it was, and though she had returned to the moon, the memory of her remained. Like the glow of moonlight upon still water, it lingered even after she was gone. In time, the emperor ordered the elixir of immortality to be burned upon the peak of the tallest mountain, that he might not drink from it and live forever without her. The smoke rose into the heavens, a message of longing carried skyward. The mountain came to be called Fuji, and the smoke, it was said, could still be seen rising in memory of the princess who returned to the moon. The tale leaves us with quiet reflection. Love cannot always hold what we most desire. Beauty, joy, and life itself are fleeting, destined to change and fade. Yet in their fleetingness, they are no less real, no less precious. Perhaps they are more so. The story of Kaguya-hime teaches us not only of loss, but of cherishing the moment before it passes, and of finding meaning in memory even when the present slips away. If this story has touched your heart tonight, I invite you to subscribe and continue these journeys with me. Each story is another lantern lit in the dark. The emperor's grief lingered long after the moon carried Kaguya-hime away. He had known, perhaps even from the first letter exchanged between them, that she was not his to keep. And yet, knowing does not soften the ache. Her absence pressed against him like a weight, an emptiness that no command or wealth could fill. He carried her letter always, brushing the words with his fingers as though by touching the ink he might hold some trace of her. Beside it, sealed carefully, he kept the small vial of the elixir of immortality. It was a gift beyond comprehension, a promise that he might live forever, freed from decay and death. Yet to the emperor it was no blessing. For what is eternity when the one you long for has gone beyond your reach? The court whispered of the vial, of the power it contained. Some urged him to drink. Others feared what such a choice might bring. But the emperor sat alone in his chambers, gazing upon the moon through silken curtains, and understood that immortality would not heal him. To live without her forever would not ease his pain, but magnify it. The years would stretch endlessly, each one an echo of loss. And so he resolved to destroy the elixir, to release both himself and the world from its burden. But how does one dispose of something so rare, so divine? He determined it should not be discarded in secrecy, but lifted high, offered to the heavens, where Kaguya-hime herself had gone. The tallest mountain in the land was chosen for this purpose. Rising above all others, its peak crowned with snow, it seemed to touch the sky itself. That mountain, Fuji, was already revered for its grandeur, a natural wonder that inspired awe in all who beheld it. To carry the elixir there was to bring his grief as close to heaven as mortal steps could reach. The journey was solemn. Courtiers, soldiers, and priests accompanied the emperor's command, climbing the slopes with careful reverence. The air thinned as they ascended, the world below shrinking into haze. Pines bit in the wind, streams gurgled over stones, and patches of wildflowers clung bravely to the mountainside. Higher still, the snow began to appear, white and eternal. At the summit, the air was sharp, and the sky felt endless. Here, at the roof of Japan, the emperor's servants built a great fire. The letter, so carefully kept, was laid upon the wood. The vial of the elixir was placed beside it. Flames licked upward, hungry and bright, consuming parchment and liquid alike. The smoke rose high into the air, curling, twisting, carried upward by the winds. The emperor, standing below, lifted his gaze. He imagined the smoke drifting toward the moon, carrying his message to Kaguya-hime, a final offering of love. He would not drink immortality, because his heart belonged to her. Better, he thought, to let their bond remain as it was, a love bound by longing, rather than a life stretched into eternity without her. The people of Japan remembered this act. They said that the smoke rose endlessly, a white plume reaching from Fuji's peak toward the heavens. For generations, travelers spoke of the mountain's fires, of the way its summit seemed to breathe sorrow into the sky. The mountain itself became a symbol, a place where memory and longing touched the divine. Fuji is no ordinary peak. Its symmetry, graceful and commanding, has made it the subject of poems, paintings, and prayers for centuries. To look upon Fuji is to feel both stillness and movement, the eternal snow, the shifting clouds, the fires that once burned upon its crown. In the tale of Kaguya-hime, the mountain became not only a landmark of earth, but a vessel of memory. It held the emperor's grief, his love, his decision to refuse eternity, and it carried those emotions skyward. In Japanese culture, mountains have long been seen as sacred places, homes of gods and spirits, bridges between earth and sky. Fuji, more than any other, came to embody this belief. Its presence is at once physical and spiritual, a reminder that the natural world is never only landscape. It holds stories, emotions, echoes of human lives that entwine with stone and snow. When we stand before a mountain, we often feel small. But in that smallness, there is also a kind of belonging. The emperor's act on Fuji bound human sorrow to nature's vastness, giving his grief a form that could endure. The plume of smoke may have faded, but the story remained. To this day, people speak of Fuji as eternal, an unchanging witness, though even Fuji is shaped by time, its slopes altered by wind, rain, and eruption. Nothing, not even mountains, escapes impermanence. And perhaps that is the lesson beneath the tale. Kaguya-hime herself embodied impermanence, the fleeting beauty of a being too radiant to remain. Her departure broke hearts, yet it revealed a truth cherished in Japanese thought. Mono no aware, the awareness of life's transience, and the bittersweet beauty found in that awareness. The emperor's burning of the letter and elixir was not simply an act of grief, but an embrace of this truth. He chose not to cling to eternity, but to let longing and memory become part of the world's flow. Fuji, then, stands as a reminder of this choice. It is a mountain of fire and snow, permanence and change, sorrow and beauty. Travelers who look upon its slopes may not always think of Kaguya-hime. Yet the mountain holds her story like an echo, layered within its stones. To see Fuji is to glimpse both earth and heaven, both endurance and loss. Even today, the mountain is a place of pilgrimage. Climbers rise before dawn to ascend its trails, and at the summit, they watch the sun emerge, bathing the world in gold. In that moment, standing above the clouds, one might feel what the emperor once sought, a closeness to the heavens, a bridge between the human heart and the celestial realm. Do you see how every landscape can carry memory? How the land itself becomes a vessel of our longings. A grove of bamboo, a quiet river, a mountain crowned in snow, all can hold the stories we leave upon them. When you next look at a place, whether familiar or grand, you might feel its history whispering to you. Every stone, every tree, every mountain peak may carry the echo of lives once lived, loves once cherished, grief once borne. The story of Kaguya-hime ends with her return to the moon, but it lingers in Fuji's shadow. Each glance at the mountain recalls the emperor's fire, the plume of smoke rising like a prayer, and the ache of love that even time and death cannot erase. And so we close this tale as it has been told for centuries, a story of beauty and loss, of gifts and farewells, of a mountain that still watches the skies. Do you see how every landscape can carry memory? If you've ever looked at a place and felt it hold a story, share that with me. I'd love to hear. The grove is quiet again. Do you hear it? That gentle hush that always lingers between the tall bamboo stalks, as if the earth itself is pausing to breathe. The story has been told of a girl born from light, of parents who loved her, of suitors who chased her, of an emperor who longed for her, and of the moon that finally reclaimed her. And now, as we stand here together in this place where it began, the only sound is the whisper of leaves moving softly in the night air. It is here, in this quiet, that the tale rests. Yet it does not end, because stories like this do not belong only to the past. They live on in the telling, in the remembering, in the way they shift and shimmer inside us long after the final words fade. The tale of the bamboo cutter has survived for more than 1,000 years. Imagine that. A millennium of voices carrying the story, passing it from one generation to the next. Each listener adding their own silence, their own wonder, their own longing to the space between the words. It is said to be Japan's oldest surviving narrative, and yet, despite its age, it feels timeless, always reaching forward to us, always ready to settle like moonlight upon new ears. Why does it endure? Perhaps because it speaks to something all of us feel, no matter the century, no matter the culture. It is a story of love and of loss, of a beauty too bright to remain, of longing that cannot be fulfilled, of parents holding a child only to let her go. These are truths no era escapes. They are as old as humanity itself, as constant as the moon overhead. And yet the tale is not only sorrow, it is also wonder. The glimmer of light inside a bamboo stalk, the magic of a child appearing where none was expected, the joy of raising her, watching her grow, hearing her laughter fill a modest home. Wonder gives the story its lightness, balancing grief with moments of joy. Perhaps that is why it feels so gentle, even as it touches upon deep ache. In Japanese thought, there is the phrase mono no aware, the awareness of the fleeting nature of all things, and the tenderness that arises from that awareness. To watch a cherry blossom drift from its branch, to hear the notes of a song fade into silence, to feel love that cannot last, all of these bring a pang of sadness, but also a sweetness. For in knowing that beauty will pass, we hold it more dearly. The story of Princess Kaguya embodies this awareness. Her life on earth was brief, but precisely because of that, her presence was unforgettable. And so we hold the paradox. We wish she could have stayed, yet we know it was her leaving that carved the story into memory. Love and impermanence dance together, and out of that dance comes meaning. But let us step back for a moment, beyond this particular tale, and think of folklore itself. Why do humans tell stories like this? Why do we sit in the dark, listening to voices carry us into worlds that blur truth and imagination? Partly, it is because stories keep cultures alive. The tale of the bamboo cutter is not only about Kaguya-hime, it is also about the Heian era, about how people lived, what they valued, how they understood beauty, family, and power. In the details of the bamboo cutter's life, in the suitor's impossible treasures, in the emperor's poetry, we glimpse the world as it once was. Without the story, so much of that texture might be lost. Folklore carries history, even when wrapped in myth. But stories do more than preserve. They also heal. Listening to a tale at the end of a long day allows the mind to loosen, to drift. We step out of our own worries for a while, and step into another world where the rhythms are slower, where time expands, where grief and joy can be held without hurry. For those who once listened by lamplight in quiet villages, these tales were company, comfort, guidance. And for us now, centuries later, they can be the same. And always, in this story, the moon is waiting. The moon has watched humanity across ages. It has seen empires rise and fall, fields planted and harvested, lovers whispering, children born and lost. The moon does not change for us. Yet we change beneath it, and we cannot help but find meaning there. We look upward, and something in us feels seen. Perhaps that is why Kaguya-hime had to return there, because the moon is where we place our longing, and she, in her beauty and sorrow, belonged to longing itself. As you lie here, listening, perhaps you too have someone or something you remember, a moment that felt too beautiful to last, a memory that still glows softly within you. This is how stories and lives weave together. You carry your own shining fragments, and when you hear an old tale, they shimmer a little brighter. The bamboo grove is quiet. The lantern's glow is fading. The night has deepened, and the moon, steady and luminous, is overhead. The story of the Moon Princess has reached its end, yet she remains with us. In the quiet ache of impermanence, in the beauty of wonder, in the way the world feels when you pause to notice its fragility. As you drift into dreams, I hope this story carries you gently. If you'd like more journeys like this, remember to subscribe, share, and return whenever you need a lantern in the night. Now, let the bamboo whisper you towards sleep. Let the moonlight soften your breath. And let the story rest within you, timeless, tender, waiting to be remembered again.